Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, and welcome to this night-ending bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And now, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this night-ending bonus upload. Shall we? Today's first encounter comes to us from that great state of Virginia. What I experienced on this evening happened very quickly from start to finish. Nevertheless, it was so crazy. Had someone else told me, I would have thought they were out of their mind. My wife was in the basement at the time doing some laundry while I was cleaning up after dinner. The two of us, living alone with no children. The trash can in the kitchen was about to burst with garbage. So I had put my jacket on, stepping out of the back door and down off the deck to where our cans are located, just along the side of the house. Right as I had jerked the lid off the metal trash can, I heard a loud yelp, which sounded fairly close. It reminded me of when I stepped on our pet's dog Paw as a child. Not knowing that he was behind me at the time, almost like a scream in dog terminology. It was really loud, not sounding like it was coming from a small dog, if it was from a dog at all. I had only stopped for a moment after hearing that yelp, turning back to the pail and putting the bag inside. I then heard what I can describe as some barking and a secondary sound, like a deep growl. I know this sounds weird, but it was hard to both discern and describe what I heard. I will say this much, it sounded like two distinct animals or dogs at the time. Not at all like these two sounds came from the same animal. There was very little light of this day left as I stood by the pails when it sounded like a coonhound was running towards my property from the acreage alongside of mine. I think most people can relate to the sound of a coonhound on the scent of an animal, and that's what I was hearing coming closer to me. My property has a hedgerow running along the perimeter of the backyard and is about 4 to 5 feet tall, with some gaps here and there between the hedges, in particular at the bottom. In literal seconds from hearing that yelp, followed by this growling sound, which was followed up by the sound of a coonhound, as I described, a Rottweiler dog comes bursting through the base of the hedges, running at full tilt across my backyard, causing me to jump. Thankfully, looking back, I was wearing black pair of jeans and a dark blue Carhartt jacket while standing in the semi-darkness on the side of the house, because what happened next was out of this world. Hurtling over the hedges comes this creature with the head of a wolf, and it was booking. I saw it for 5 seconds, if that, coming over one side of the yard's hedges, running across my yard like a dart and clearing the hedges on the other side, following the same path as the dog. I did not hear another thing. As you would imagine, I was stunned. I went into the house, my wife still being downstairs, as I sat at our table. When she finally came up from the basement, she immediately asked what was wrong. So I broke down in so many words what had just happened. Now, allow me to backtrack a little bit and fill in some of my observations in retrospect. The dog was running for its life, as I now know, its tongue flailing out of the side of its mouth across the yard, happening very fast. I don't know where it had come from, and try as I may, could not locate anyone who said they knew of its ownership. It did have what I now believe was a slash mark down its side. Having never seen a Rottweiler with a stripe before, perhaps it had been slashed by this creature when I heard that yelp. I'm only speculating here, after the fact based on what I'm sharing. This wolf creature was in a forward lean the entire 5 seconds at best that I saw it. My estimate that it was maybe 7.5 feet tall, standing straight up. It had a short stub of a tail, maybe less than a foot long, and covered in hair from head to toe, not fur. I say not fur because the covering was not as dense as fur that I know of, such as that of a dog. It had long and very pronounced snout and pointed ears, very long and tawny arms with legs to match. Visually, like a tall and muscular basketball player, to give you an idea. It crossed my yard in maybe a dozen rapid steps, and it was gone over the hedges. I don't rightfully know what I saw that evening, but it was alive and chasing another living creature in the form of a dog. That much I am certain of. I've since then heard of the Dogman, but I would call this a wolfman and nothing else. It's hard to accept that such things may be watching us as we take our trash out or go about our daily chores. But I know what I saw, and it was no imaginary creature. So really quick, the way he described that creature was a muscular basketball player. Athletic build, but still nonetheless very different than a bodybuilder. And I really can relate to those experiences and those descriptions more than when someone says, oh, it looked like a bodybuilder with a wolf's head. One of the best descriptions I had ever heard was someone described it as either a athletically built long distance runner or a long distance swimmer. And that one that he described it as a swimmer, really, if you think about how these creatures look, makes a lot more sense to me than these bodybuilder dogmen. Yes, they are still muscular. And maybe it's because of the height. And obviously the shoulders are going to be wider because of the height than a human. But it just seems more plausible to me, those descriptions. Because what I saw in 1994 was at least, how big is a stop sign? 7.5 feet tall. Slender, but you could tell that it was very strong, all in the same sense. These things are, you got to think, like having a bodybuilder build would be kind of hard to do in the woods when you don't have a gym. But when you are actively hunting and maneuvering through the woods, you are going to have muscle mass. Your best way to describe a Dogman and a Sasquatch would be like farmer strong, because they're using their muscles as they are living their lives. That's just my opinion anyway. Let's jump into today's next encounter. My experience happened the year of 1999. It occurred in February and March of that year. At the time, I was a security guard at a local coal mine located at Fondee Mountain, Kentucky. My shift was from 6 p.m. to 9 a.m. It was a deep mine containing 3 separate shafts, not a strip mine. There were 3 shift changes during a 24-hour period time. The men were only allowed to work 8 hours and no more. During the day and evening shifts, there was generally 25 to 30 men working in that mine, with an overnight shift being strictly for maintenance. Covered by about 8 to 10 men, these men were in charge of equipment maintenance and assuring that the shafts were safe and secure for the men to work. My job was to keep people who did not belong out of there and keep an eye out for any animals that may come into or near the camp, such as bear, bobcat, and an occasional cougar. When the men spent a shift in the mine and came out into the light, he would be sometimes blinded for a minute or two as his eyes became accustomed to the outside world, and I had to keep an eye on them. While getting used to the daylight, this was the perfect time for some critters to get the jump on them. Men would sometimes come out in need of something, and I shadowed them until they were safely back in the mine. This mountain is part of the Cumberland Mountain chain, with our mining operation sitting at some 2,500 feet elevation on its side. At the time, I was 23 years old, toting a Browning 12-gauge automatic shotgun and keeping an eye on things around the camp. The main base was about 145 yards long and 45 yards wide, containing some trailers for maintenance, headquarters, and many other things, as well as having porta potties and dumpsters located in the grounds along the side of the lot. On the western end of the camp, spreading out over a long and narrow hillside, there was an area we referred to as the boneyard, a place where we kept damaged equipment and the like, a place where we could scavenge parts in a pinch if the need should arise. There were a couple small pole-mounted lights within this boneyard for some illumination, and that's what it is, with the rest of the camp being reasonably well lit, in particular near the toilets and the dumpsters. During the tail end of February, I noticed piles of scat located on and around the camp's perimeter, nothing within the base itself. With most of the bear in hibernation at the time, I assumed it had been left by a rogue bear, and mentioned as much to a foreman of the operation at the time. The scat I was finding was in big piles, and the only thing that came to mind was a big bear. Bigfoot not being in my mind at that time. It was during the last week of March when things got a little strange on the property. At around 2 or 3 in the morning, I was standing guard, leaning against the trailer, my eyes glancing over the boneyard, when I saw something crawling on all fours around the yard's edge. Of course, on all fours, my first inclination was yet again that it was a bear, but it looked very odd. I walked up to the area where it was to have a look-see. Most definitely something had been moving around on the ground based on what was visible, but there were no discernible tracks. Several days later, again the same thing. About 2 or 3 in the morning, I was looking toward the boneyard, my eyes fixed on the road grader we had parked there. The top of the cab on this machine was over 10 feet tall, and I saw a head moving back and forth above it. At the time, I thought that a giant bear must be standing on one of the greater tires, enabling me to see its head at that height. It was looking straight down the hill and directly at me. I'm now thinking it was, in fact, a rogue bear having come out of hibernation and that had been leaving the scat piles around the perimeter of the camp. It was about 50 to 75 yards away when I saw it dark in color, and to be honest with you, my mind could not process at the time. Something about it did not seem right. Minutes later, the head was gone from view as I watched this thing now down on all fours again, doing this spider-type crawl, exiting the yard into the woods. The reason behind me saying it was a spider crawl was that it was moving in like a box-like pattern. Its movements were left, right, and side to side in a very unusual manner, unlike a bear. Moments later, I heard some rustling in the brush behind the dumpsters, and two paws appeared wrapped around the edge of the dumpster. The lighting was very bright by the dumpsters and the toilets, and on the second glance, they were hands, not paws. The dumpsters were 7 feet tall at the rear, and that's when a head arose over the back side. Its face looked like pure evil. As I raised my shotgun, pointing directly at it, it then lowered. It moved, grabbing what was a bag from the dumpster, causing me to raise the gun again. And it screamed. It sounded like a tornado siren going off, and I could feel it in my bones. It huffed at me, turned, and walked away into the woods, never to be seen again. There was no one else outside of the mine at that time except for me. Many fellas came to work with ribs and chicken for food. More than likely, this creature was grabbing a bag of scraps out of the dumpster to snack on. When I told the foreman what had happened, he just laughed at me. This creature had hair covering its upper body, which was all I had seen except for its face. The face looked more like a caveman than anything else, and I saw it in the light. I had been hunting my entire life until that point, and I had seen many strange things in the woods, twisted limbs, footprints, and other odd things, but had never given much thought to it, perhaps. My mother and grandmother were pure Cherokee, and after I had told them what I had experienced, they opened up to me in a way neither of them had before. They knew that what I had seen was a Bigfoot, which was a reassurance to me at the time, no matter what anyone else thought about it. Today's third encounter. At the time of this experience, I was heading south on, as I recall, Highway 16, running alongside the edge of the Delta National Forest in Arkansas. It was late in the day, September 28th, 2015. My buddy and I were in his pickup, with me riding shotgun at the time, following the vehicle in front of us, about 10 car lengths behind them. We were in no hurry at all, heading to his house, when out of nowhere this enormous hound, or what we thought was a hound, comes barreling out of the woods to our right, catching up to and now running alongside the car we were following. At the time, we were doing better than 40 miles an hour, which in of itself was crazy. The top of this creature's back was midway up the car's passenger window. I could see nobody else in the car except for the driver, whose head was visible to us following. At that moment, the two of us are out of our minds with what is happening in front of us. All this is coming out of nowhere in a split second. My buddy steps on the gas to get a bit closer, while at the same time the other car's driver must have seen this creature and swerves his car toward it, perhaps in a moment of sheer panic. As this car veered toward the beast, it launched itself left, clearing the entire vehicle in one bound. Now, in the other northbound lane, I will never forget what happened next. There was a small Isuzu box truck, one of those 16-foot jobs, coming the other way. Right at the moment this beast cleared the roof, landing right in front of him at the speed in the road. The driver spiked the brakes hard with his truck going up onto the shoulder of the street. The creature narrowly missing, getting killed in the process. We had nearly stopped ourselves watching the truck driver through his windshield, frantically cutting the wheel to avoid the collision. This giant dog or wolf stopped momentarily by the edge of the woods, stood up, looking directly at us, then dropped onto all fours and disappeared into the forest. The guy in the Isuzu held his head in disbelief as we pulled up to the shoulder. Getting out of the pickup, he rolled down his window, asking us, "What the hell was that thing?" The other car just kept driving southbound. We told him we didn't know, but we had never seen anything like it before. I am now saying it was either a Dogman or a Wolfman. In a split second, it launched over that car's roof. Its body overhung both sides of the vehicle by at least a foot or two in the air, making it 8 to 10 feet long and several hundred pounds at least. We had no idea why, out of the clear blue, this thing had darted out of the trees running alongside that car in the first place, coupled with the hair-raising leap over the vehicle at such a speed. Was something chasing it? And if so, what would that be? It was either frightened or just plumb crazy or both. Like a timber wolf, it had longer type fur, with large teeth visible from its mouth. It also had long ears fixed straight up into the air the entire time of this sighting. I had never seen anything like it, and quite honestly, with you, I hope I never do. All right, guys, so the update or follow-up with the North Carolina retired state trooper. So a little bit of rehashing. 2001, this state trooper and another state trooper are on this kind of swamp boat, one of those airboats with the fans in the back. And they are in the East Dismal Swamp, which kind of runs along the coast of North Carolina. There's kind of this little island chain that runs between the mainland, so mainland, some swamp, and the chain, and then the sea. They're looking for kind of weed fields or anything, pretty much just to get off the road and out into the wilderness that day. Motors real loud, and as they're coming through, they're pretty close to the Emily and Richardson Pryor Buckridge Reserve. They hear this loud thump, 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 and it's a helicopter, and they realize it is, and they see it kind of smoke's coming out of the back, and they see it crash. Well, they get to the area, and what they see is the helicopter is on its side. The rudder is kind of like this, sticking out, and they see two military like men standing on the side of the helicopter. And all of a sudden they see this huge kind of monstrous clawed hand come out and pick itself up. And they see what they can only describe as a Dogman minus a tail, which on this channel we call them werewolves. They don't change. They don't shapeshift. We just call them werewolves because that's what a government hunter told us a while ago. And then another one comes out. So at the time, that one takes off into the woods, and then the other one jumps out and goes. After those two creatures kind of fly into the woods and run away, the military men notice the two state troopers standing on this kind of dried grass. And it's where they are. They could have easily, if there was less terrain, taken their airboat above that and gotten over to them, but they couldn't get to them because this land was pretty rocky and not feasible to go across. They yell, "Hey, we're going to radio for help. Do you need help? What's going on? Does people, one of the military guys goes, "We're good. We got it taken care of. We got people coming." And not listening, as state troopers and other police officers do, because that's their job, they end up radioing it in. And within a 2-hour time, we have now military and a couple of other state troopers. And the troopers are, trying to get in to help what's going on and trying to assess what's going on. But they are then told, hey, we have this. Stand back. We don't need your assistance. Thank you, but we don't need your assistance. So pretty much scram, get them out of here. And they're not listening because they are state troopers. It's their state. They are sworn to protect that state. There's some argument that goes on with a couple of these military men that showed up on the scene, not the ones in the helicopter. They overhear one of the guys that was in the helicopter talking to someone that, hey, we still have a guy in there and we still have 2 more of those in there with us. The other 2 are heading towards Virginia. And he always kind of is like, what the hell were they talking to? And how and why would these things be going towards Virginia? Well, we now know that there are these breeding facility and holding facilities for these creatures all throughout our country, but a few in Virginia. So they are then kind of like, we got to get these bodies out. The military is kind of setting up a perimeter to keep anyone coming in or going out. Within the next time period, federal park rangers are on the scene and they start talking to the state trooper who contacted me. And they are pretty much telling these state troopers, hey guys, we just talked to the military. They have everything in control. We're here now. If there's, anything that they need, we can provide it. Also, there was a crash in a reserve. So, we are probably going to find these guys. We'll probably find the military, whatever, for oil leakage or whatever. We got it, and to the state trooper, it sounded just like BS. It's like, oh, you're just telling us, what we want to hear to get us out of there. So the night goes by and the next morning, the two military men that are not hurt are gone. The one that was hurt, that the Dogman picked up out of there, or the werewolf, picked up out of there, he was put on a stretcher and taken out of there. So the next day, they come back. He goes back, and he's actually, at the end of his day, told, don't go back there. We were told that you were told not to interfere, and you did. And we had the head honchos come down on us. So don't go back. And okay, yeah, I won't go back. We won't go back. But out of curiosity, they do go back. Not where they were, but a distance away with binoculars so they can see what's going on. What they do see is the helicopter is now flipped up. They've dragged it with some kind of aquatic vehicle, and they've got like a flatbed kind of skiffed boat that they're going to put it on, and they see bodies. There's 3 body bags. 2 are like 8 to 9 feet long, and one is clearly a regular sized human body bag. That one is like a dark green. These larger ones are a black with some kind of orange seal or emblem on them. Everything's quickly taken care of. They try like hell not to be seen, but they do believe they're seen, because when that day is done again, they get reamed out and they are suspended with no pay for a week. And they, after their week, they end up going back to look for any kind of clues. And they go to where that other side is looking for prints. Well, being that it wasn't a season where there's a lot of rain, it had actually been hot. So that mud off where those werewolves took off running had kind of turned to clay, and they saw prints going north west a little towards Virginia. They didn't follow them, but they did see them. And that was what he saw. He didn't push the matter any further, but to see the line of power, you're dealing with 2 state troopers, the military, and then the military has the Federal Park Service come in to pretty much control the state police. Because pretty much the military can't, like the CIA, they can't act on American soil. National Guard can, but, which was pretty interesting. And, it's just something that's bothered him for a long time, and he's always thought about those black body bags with the kind of orange seal or emblem. He couldn't see what it was because he's using binoculars and they're a ways off. But that's something that obviously always had bothered him. And then to see these creatures run, and then to hear, the people say they're headed towards Virginia or back to Virginia. So it's pretty freaking crazy if you ask me. Today's final experience comes to us from the great state of Alabama in the Talladega National Park. At the time of my life, I was living in a city called Pell, Alabama, having since moved further south in the state. My then girlfriend and I planned a little camp out for a couple of days in the Talladega National Forest, where I had spent considerable time throughout the years. I distinctly remember that it was September of 1988, that we had gone to the park waiting for a high temperatures of summer to ease off a bit. Nothing's worse than spending time in a tent baking your ass off with no relief. 2 days into our little soiree in the woods, my girlfriend and I are hiking through the trees. Nothing unusual about it at the time. We had come out of the pines at the time of this sighting, now walking for a stretch on and off road trail or access road, well worn and obviously in use for many years, unlike any dirt road you may have seen. It was wide enough for a truck to use, with a track on either side from the tires and a low berm covered in grass. As we hiked along, virtually at any point you could see ahead of you on this road for a good 100 yards or more. The pines flanking the road being very short and spindly. These pines, I should add, were not in the best of condition, some of which were almost entirely devoid of needles. Not in any way the best-looking area of the park by any means. But then we heard what sounded like a cross between a growl and a bark, like you may have heard when, say, a couple of jackals are fighting over a downed gazelle or something of the sort in Africa. It was faint but very noticeable, sounding ahead in the woods. This type of sound was not particularly alarming to either of us at the time, thinking that it was a couple of hog furrowing around, which would generally run off as you got nearer to them, so we kept walking. However, what we saw next was off the charts, just plain weird. As the road meandered like a serpent ahead of us, and we could see this creature of some sort wrangling around with something on the ground. I could not tell you at the time what angle I saw of the animal, nor could I identify what I saw. Still, it was relatively large and crouched down, apparently tearing into some other type of animal. Now we could distinctly hear various grunts, growls as this creature was feasting on its prey. So we stopped, not willing to get any closer. I thought it was a giant wolf, which did not make any sense to me in the area, or the biggest damn coyote man has ever seen. That made no sense either. Suddenly, it started thrashing its head from side to side violently, ripping and tearing at the flesh, allowing us to get a good look at its profile of its face and mouth. Its head was shaped like that of an enormous wolf, you can imagine, twice the size of the largest shepherd I had ever seen. And there we stood. I was just about to signal my girlfriend to leave when, with one of the turns of its head, it must have seen us peripherally and launched to its feet. I am talking about 2 feet on the ground now, standing upright and facing us on that road. I physically jumped when it did so, and my girlfriend tucked behind me as we started moving backward. It was kind of snarling, growling, barking in a combination, much like a junkyard dog does when you approach the fence of the yard, defending its meal from intruders. I was out of my mind in fear, trembling bodily from head to toe, but it didn't advance towards us whatsoever, simply standing its ground and ready to fight. It then turned and crouched back down to begin eating again, growling and yapping away while it was doing so, and we hightailed it out of there. I didn't know exactly where this road would lead us, but we stayed on it, not willing to dip back into the trees, hopeful that someone in a vehicle may come along and pick us up, which did happen about 45 minutes later. This wolf or dog-like beast stood about 6 to 7 feet tall before us, right out in the open road with no obstruction to our sight line. And it was fierce in every sense of the word. It stood erect on 2 legs and feet, having long arms and hands and being covered chiefly with fur, except for its chest and stomach area and the inside of its arms. No wonder it appeared so big, hunched down on the ground after seeing it stand on its feet. The Forest Service vehicle had approached us down the road, a piece stopping to say hello, and we went off on this poor man about what had just happened. He must have thought that we were a couple of dopers hanging out in the woods when we started telling him our tale, but he began to come around. He asked if we would take him to where this happened, and we were unwilling to do so, telling him that we had walked 45 minutes to where we are now, and he took us back in the truck. Later that day, we ran across him again. He had driven back up the road and found the remains of the kill. The ground was hard on the road, well worn over the years, but he said he saw massive canine prints. We had some conversation between the 3 of us, and then my girlfriend and I were gone goodbye. Today I couldn't begin to tell you where my girlfriend is now or how to get in touch with her so that she could tell you her side of the story. It's funny how life has a way of redirecting us. My thinking at the time that she and I would be together for a lifetime didn't seem to pan out for either of us. This sighting had also changed the 2 of us at the time, unable to shake off the visage of what we had encountered. I wish I had never seen it. And tonight's final encounter. In the fall of 2017 or 18, my buddy Jay and I were going to the LBL to deer hunt. Jay was heading down from Michigan for the week, and I had gone into the woods the day before his arrival to set up our tree stands in place. It was October. I had set Jay's stand on a ridge above the bottom land where I would be, an area named Wildcat Hollow. The 2 of us would be about 300 yards apart during the hunt, and being as we were so close to civilization, we still had cell service, which would allow us to use text message to each other during the hunt. This locale is only a mile from Tennessee River, which in these parts turns into Kentucky Lake, a dam being built many years back. Jay had arrived late in the day following my setting of the stands for the 2 of us, and the following morning we were in a place some 300 yards apart an hour before sunrise. The leaves had just begun to fall, most still clinging to the branches, as we sat watching and listening for any activity. That's when we heard the first tree come crashing down. I heard a loud crack followed by a whooshing noise of a tree falling through the canopy surrounding it. Jay texted me almost immediately asking me if I had heard that, which I did. It happened virtually in between our 2 positions, which at the time I did not give much thought to. Only a short time after this, a second tree came crashing to the ground. This time, it was like a free fall with none of the whooshing sounds, only that of the tree hitting the earth with a loud thud. I have spent time in the woods hunting since my youth, and in all that time, I can only remember hearing one tree fall. In that short time, we had heard two, and it was not over. Just a short time later, I heard what sounded like a tree being pushed back and forth with numerous cracking and snapping sounds to go along with it, followed by the inevitable crash to earth. By 8:30 in the morning, the tree felling had ceased, and we had seen 0 deer. Jay and I had texted each other to meet in the middle so that we could speak, to find that tree that had come down closer to our position. I found the tree. It was about 20 inches in diameter, appearing to be in excellent condition, with leaves still on it. Having been snapped and splintered at about 5 to 6 feet level from the ground, showing no internal insect or rot damage, as well as no lightning strike evidence having happened in the past. It was a healthy, large tree. As the two of us stood there looking at it, Jay asked me what I thought had happened, and I breached the subject of some sort of creature being the culprit. Bigfoot, Dogman, I don't know. He would have none of that. After which I argued what would have the power to snap a tree at that height from the ground without being able to leverage it from a higher level. So I commenced to shimmy back up the narrower tree to point out where my weight would start to bend it over. At the point it snapped and splintered virtually at the same height and the same way the larger tree had. Jay just stood there and shook his head, saying nothing. He did comment on how still and quiet the forest had been that morning, a fact that supported something being around that the other wildlife did not like. The following morning I had put an arrow through a nice doe and texted Jay that I had done so. After waiting 20 minutes, I climbed out of my stand and began the track. There was apparent blood in tracks, easy for someone of my skill set to follow, which brought me down to the edge of a creek. This creek is only ankle deep, having walked through it to the other edge. The tracks and blood had ended on the first side as I approached. The deer, having not crossed the creek, was gone. Whatever had happened to it had occurred next to the stream, a spot that could only be seen when you're walking into it. 3 days later, Jay texted me BBD, which in our terminology meant big buck down. He had run an arrow in one side of the buck and out the other as it bolted into the howl. Heading away from the position, blood came out from both sides of this animal, and we both began to track it, which continued unbelievably for several hours, ending where the tracks and blood stopped, going up the opposite side of the howl. The buck was nowhere to be found. Just as my doe had vanished by the creek, so did Jay's buck disappear without a trace. Here's the real kicker. If what I've said so far is insufficient, weeks before this hunt in the LBL, I had read about a game warden who had a ranch not 10 miles from where we stood, who hired a man with a backhoe to dig something up on his property. I don't remember if it was a cesspool, drain pipe, or whatever. The man was being pelted by rocks while working on the property, so he had called the warden thinking he was screwing with him. As they spoke, the warden said he was on the other side of the lake, far away from his house and the man. Having arrived back at the farm, the warden, now standing and talking with the machine operator, experiences rocks being thrown at him and the operator. At the same time, his daughter, standing on the porch, said, "Hey, Daddy, what is that?" When the men turned to where she was pointing, they saw 3 huge creatures standing on the side of his field, fully visible to the parties. My conclusion regarding the matter is there seems to be a population of these creatures in the surrounding area, as crazy as that may seem to some, performing various activities regarding human interactions. And there you have it, folks. I do hope you all enjoyed this night ending bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.